If you want your shoulders to look great, they got to look good not just from the front, but from the side as well. Today I'm going to break out the muscle marker to show you guys how to build the wider shoulder from that side view by using the right exercises at the right time. What's up guys, Jeff Cavalier, ATHLEAN-X.com. Today we're talking about how to get your shoulders to look a lot better no matter what angle people view you at. You see, we broke out the muscle markers in the past and told you how to develop that shoulder width when looked at from the front here. But what about the other angles? What about when you're looking at from the side? You still want to be able to have that appearance of having a wide shoulder. Well, I'll tell you this, the areas of that shoulder that you're going to focus on are drastically different depending upon which view it is you're trying to thicken or widen out. You see, in the video we covered before, how to build out that width in the frontal plane. In other words, when looked at from the direct front. That was really focusing on the middle delt, as you see here with the muscle marker, because this is the one that has the most lateral presence. It's the one that builds off in that frontal plane and creates that width side to side. But in order to kind of shift that focus around to get that depth front to back, then you're obviously going to want to focus on the front and the back, meaning the front delt and the rear delt. And when you look at the front delt here, you can see that the ability to create some thickness in the shoulder is substantial if you train it. Now people will say, look, I already trained the front delt, I think, enough, right, when I bench press and overhead press. And yes, while the front delt does take on a bulk of the load there, very few people can't benefit from some additional training, and I'm going to show you the exercises to do. And then it comes down to that back side. And as always, as it tends to happen here, out of sight, out of mind, a lot of us never include the rear delt, and that is a major mistake, especially if it's that depth and that width that you're looking for. I'm going to show you the best exercises to hit that rear delt the right way. Well, with that being said, guys, let's start on that front side with a couple new options. All right, so the first exercise up here is one that actually takes advantage of the variation in strength curve when we change the orientation of our body when we perform the exercise. So we know that the traditional front dumbbell raise is really good at hitting the front delt. But what are some of the limitations? Well, number one, we don't get a stretch on the front delt in the bottom position. As you can see, the dumbbell simply just rests on your thigh at your side. Secondly, as we start to raise the dumbbell, we don't really get a lot of tension on the front delt until we get past 20 degrees or so, and it peaks out when our arm is parallel to the ground here at about 90 degrees. Well, you can change all that depending upon how you perform the exercise, and we can do it really easily right here with an incline bench. You can see that just by sitting down and orientating our body this way, that we now have our arm back behind our body in extension, which means that there's a front delt stretch in place. And as we initiate the movement here, we get tension on the delt in a stretch position. So we have an advantage that we didn't have in the normal version of this. And then when I get to the top here, all I have to do is simply sit up. And when I sit up, you can see I got another 20 degrees or so to go before I get to that position that gave us the best effect when we were standing. It's an amazing way to get your front delts to have a greater growth stimulus throughout the entire range of motion. The next exercise up here is another way to build the front delt, and it's actually something you can do a little bit more explosively, or you can slow it down for a little bit more concentrated tension. It's a variation of something I showed you before called the scoop press. And with the scoop press, another great way to build the front delt, you're actually just locking out that arm in 90 degrees and then allowing your body to continue that press up overhead. So you work that front delt up to the top and then press overhead. Here though, we're not necessarily looking at the press overhead as much as we're looking at the press out. And when we get our arms out, and by lengthening our arms out in front of our body, the weight that we're holding feels instantly heavier because the moment arm of that weight becomes substantially larger as we reach out, which means in the long run, more stimulus on that front delt. And what's great about this is for people that do have shoulder problems, whenever they do press overhead, you're not going to run into that same situation because you're able to press away from your body but keep the elevation limited so it doesn't place any impingement stress on your shoulder. And if you're looking for a little bit of a change when it comes to the stimulus that you have for your front delt, in other words, getting away from just all the heavy work, you can go for the metabolic stress and overload with something here called a plate 8. And all you got to do is grab a plate, preferably here as heavy as you can handle, but still something you can handle for a long period of time, meaning about 45 seconds to a minute or even a little bit longer. And your goal here is to simply make some 8s in the air as if they're laying on their side. All you have to do is keep your arms out and extended as long as they possibly can be for as long as you can. The great thing about this is, similar to what I just mentioned in the last exercise, you can modify this load by shortening the moment arm and bringing the plate a little bit closer as you fatigue. This is a buster, guys, but I promise you, it's worth it. Now moving on to the rear delt, this is where the real gains are to be had. Why? Because it has the greatest capacity for growth. Why? Because a lot of us skip it. It's the truth. We just don't do enough rear delt work. It's one of those backside posterior chain muscles that we don't ever pay enough attention to. But I'm going to change that here for you today. The fastest way for you to do that is to realize that the rear delt fly is not your best friend when it comes to building the rear delt. If you really want to train this muscle, you got to make sure that you're getting the arm not just to the level of the body here, but back behind the body. The most key activation technique you can use is to figure out exercises that allow you to get your arm behind your body into extension. You get some bonus points if you can get some extra rotation at the shoulder as well. The good thing about these movements is it's going to do all of those things. The first move up here is called the rear delt row, focusing mostly on that extension of the arm behind the body. And the other benefit we get here is that I can actually get a little bit of that external rotation. You can see as I pull the dumbbell up towards my shoulder, I'm actually trying to rotate my hand backwards at the same time, almost like I'm trying to point my thumb at somebody who's standing behind me. That gives me the combination of the external rotation with the extension of the elbow back behind the body. As a matter of fact, you can probably feel it right now sitting where you are without even having to hold a weight. It's a great way to target the rear delt, and it's just one of the ways that you're going to want to do so if you want to get that area to start growing. The next one actually gives you a chance to hit that rear delt with just your own body weight, and you don't need any extra equipment. It's called the back widow. And what you'll see here is the common trait that your arms are really focused on getting back behind your body. You see, I position myself on the ground, and all I'm trying to do is dig my elbows in and push my body away, get that chest elevated up and away from the ground. And you can see how much elevation there is when you look at it from behind here in getting the arm into extension. That's going to light that rear delt up again, regardless of the fact that you're not even using any equipment. One of the things that's always bothered me when it comes to rear delt training is people think you have to always go light in order to build them. It's not the case. As a matter of fact, one of the best ways that you can build your rear delts is to just sit down and do a heavy seated row. But there are a couple things that you can do to actually make this work the rear delt a little bit more. First of all, you want to get those elbows out away from your sides. The tighter they are to your sides, the more lat you're going to involve. More so, we can actually change the position of our hands in the direction of pull. Instead of taking a fully pronated overhand position, we want to try to think about pulling our hands backwards, getting the back of our hand to face somebody behind us. And when we do that, we're getting a little bit more of that rotation pull, combining the effect of extension and a little bit of shoulder external rotation to really target that rear side. And if you want an alternative here, you can actually use a lat pull-down machine and do the same thing in standing without having to abandon the mechanics that actually work on the last exercise. You can do this simply by posting your foot up and aiming once again to get the elbows high and back as far as you possibly can. You can see how much it lights up the rear delt, and once again, you're not limited here by the weight you're using. You're able to apply a much heavier stress to the rear delts, and believe me, they're capable of it. Here we can get a little bit more isolation and hit them a little bit more effectively. The fact is, guys, you have heavier options when you need them. And of course, you didn't think I was going to go an entire video without mentioning my favorite exercise of all time when it comes to hitting the upper back and the rear delt and everything in between, the face pull. Just make sure you're giving it as much love as I am. Remember, guys, when you're trying to get your shoulders to look as good as they possibly can, you got to make sure you look as good from every angle that you can. And that means not just from the front, but when you look at from every angle, including the side. And to do that, guys, no head of the delt escapes. You got to hit the front, the middle, and the rear. In this case, the front and the rear are going to get the job done when we're trying to create that depth. If you're looking for a program that overlooks nothing, right? No angle goes unnoticed here, guys, at ATHLEAN-X. You can find all of our programs over at ATHLEAN-X.com. In the meantime, if you found the video helpful, leave your comments and thumbs up below. Let me know what else you want me to cover. I'll do my best to do that for you in the days and weeks ahead. And if you haven't already done so, guys, make sure you click subscribe and turn your notifications so you never miss a video when we put it out. All right, guys, see you soon.